Okay, right now we will be working on a Python tutorial on an actual example. And so right now we're going to learn how to create a file. Then we're going to accept input from our user, do a little bit of math on that user's input, and then print some output. Finally, we're going to run our program in idle.app, and you'll see how to do all of these in just a quick second. All right, the first thing that you're going to want to do is go into your applications and choose the Python idle app. So one way that I can do this on my Mac is just by going to my applications in my Finder. If you're on a Windows, go ahead and just type idle.app into your search bar, but I am on my Mac right now, and so I'm going to scroll down all the way to where it says Python.3.9, and I'm going to click the down arrow. And I have a lot of little helpful files in here, but right now I just want to click on the idle.app. And actually, you'll want to double click that. Python is then opening up for me a console or a shell window for doing Python commands. Now this is going to be the same in a Windows computer as it will be in a Mac computer. What you're going to do right now, we are going to create a file, and we're going to do that from idle. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here where it says file, and we're going to click new file. And see, there's a command. You can click Control New or Command New. I'm just going to use the menu option and click New File. And you can see it opens up for me a blank file. And what I want to do is save it. So I am going to come up here and click File and Save. You can do Save or Save As. I'm just going to do Save. And it's going to pull up a prompt for me to save it as a certain name. And I'm going to name my file Exponent _program. And you can see it's going to save in my documents, and then it's going to save as a .py or .pyw. These are Python file formats, and so this is how my computer is going to know how to run it as a Python file. So Exponent program, and then I'm going to click save. You can choose where you want to save it. I don't mind saving in my documents, so I click save. Awesome. Okay, now we are just going to create a very basic program in Python, but first, my text is rather small. I would like it to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to come up here where it says Preferences, and I'm going to choose to make my text a little bit bigger. I know it's a bit different in Windows how to do that. And then I'm going to choose 14, and I'm going to click OK. Now you can go in and you can change the font to all sorts of different stuff. I don't mind this font, so I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And so now when I type, it should be a little bit bigger, and it definitely made it bigger in here. The first part of my program. So in this program, I am going to be creating an exponent. And if you remember from our previous example, our previous tutorial, the way we did an exponent was with the double asterisk. Let me pull up for you an example of an exponent, a base number with a power, so that you can see what it is that we're doing. So I've gone ahead and opened up a whiteboard here, and you can see that I have x to the power of y. So we talked a little bit about this before. It is where you have some base number, and it has that base number can multiply itself to itself. However many is set in the power. So 2 times 2 is going to be 4. So it would be 2 times 2 equals 4. And then we have over here, we have 2 to the third power, that's going to be 8. So we have 2 times 2 is 4. And so 4 times 2 is 8. And so that is what we mean by exponent. So that's just a real quick reminder of what I mean when I'm talking about exponentials. Awesome. So we're going to create a program that does this calculation for us. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to first define our variable. So our variable is going to be, if you recall, we had the x as our base. So I'm going to say we had base. So I'm going to call my variable base, and I'm going to set that equal to whatever my user's input is. So how do we get input in Python? Well, the way we ask our user to give us input is by using our keyword input, and then we have our opening and closing parentheses, and that is going to prompt our user for some sort of input. Let me show you what I mean. So if I say base is equal to input, and then I say, please input a base, and I make sure I close that with my closing quotation, and then I use my parentheses, and I click enter. It's going to ask me to please input a base, and so now I'm going to input 2, and it does nothing. Why? Well, let's check out. Let's print base, and it gives us 2. So it stored our input into that variable base. So we want to have this in our program, so I'm going to say base then we're going to ask the user to please input a base. And then I like to put a little colon and a space. Notice that when I input the base, there was no space there, so it looks a little sloppy. So when I ask the user input a base, now when we run this program, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click run module, and it's going to ask to save it first, so click yes. And now you can see that when I run it, it runs whatever is in my program currently. So I'm going to click base, and now 5 is in my base. And I'm going to print base, and it's going to give me 5. Awesome. Okay, now we have the user's base. Now we need their power. So I'm going to say, okay, now that you've given me the base, I need a power. So please input a power. And putting that same space and that same quotation mark. So I'm going to try this again and make sure it works. It's always good to work in small steps whenever programming. So even if you think it should work, it's still good to try. So input a base, we put base, input a power. I'm going to put the power of 2. Now I can print base and then print power. Awesome, so our program is working great. Now what do we want to do? Well, we want to put whatever our base is, and we want to use the exponent. So if you remember from the previous tutorial, we had used that double asterisk to do exponents. So what we want to do is we want to make our result equal to the base to the exponent of our power. So let's run this and see if it works. So I'm going to do 2 to the power of 2. Uh-oh, have a little problem here. I was expecting this problem, and we talked a little bit about this in our Python tutorial. So let's read it and see if we can. So it's calling the problem at base exponent power. So it says type error, unsupported operands for power or POW using a string and a string. Well, I thought that these were numbers that I just inputted. Well, technically they are, but the way that Python reads them, whenever we read in using this input stream here, this input function, it actually reads everything into these variables as strings. So what we want to do is make sure that we cast them into floats or integers in order to make sure that we can actually do math with them, because we can't do math with text-based variables. So I'm going to cast this into a float. And so now whatever I put into my base will be a float, and I'm going to cast this into a float as well. And now let's run the program and see if it works. Make sure you save it. All right, so now I'm going to put in a 2 and a 2. Okay, so we technically don't have anything wrong. Let's see if it has result stored in there. There we go. So now we can print, and we see that our result is 4.0, which is our correct power. Awesome. Okay, so that worked. Now we want to print that out for the user. So once the user has input their base and input their power, we now have that correctly stored result. We can now print the result for our user. So now I'm going to just type in my variable name and save it and run it. You know, this one's showing me I can click F5 to run, but I'm just going to click run here on my file. So I'm going to click 2. So please input base 2, please input power 2, and it prints out for me my result. Now, if you want a prettier result than just 4.0, you can always go in and print using the putting a statement into your print. So you can say something like your result is equal to, and then just do a comma here. So now we run it. 2 to the power of 2, and we say your result is equal to, and now we have our result right here. So that when we use that comma, it just added that result to the end of our statement here. So remember, we would use a comma to put these on the same line. I'm not requiring that you have a pretty output print, but if you want to do something like that, you can. And that is all you should need to know for your current assignment. So go ahead and get started. Take a look at your assignment and rewatch and walk along with me on this so that you can get all of the important elements if you need to, and we will see you in a future module.